Hello YouTube, this is ChaosDude7111 and I'm coming to you with a brand new series. So, I've had some experience doing some vlog-style videos on 8 ideas for a while, but I decided to bring some of that fun over here, only rather than vlogging about, topics that are, directly speaking to members of and allies for the asexual community, I decided to share some of my own experiences surrounding, dating while polyamorous and asexual and all these things. My goal is to demystify polyamorous dating and the way poly relationships tend to work, because there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of misinformation spread about our community, and I kind of wanted to give you one polyamorous person's take on some of my more ridiculous and outlandish dating experiences. Kind of think of Tinder terrors for polyamory. And I've decided to call this series Misadventures in Polyamory. And what better story to make my debut with this new series than one of my earliest misadventures in polyamory. This is so early, it happened to me back when I was in college over 2 years ago. And, hoo boy, is it a good one. Because not only is this misadventures in polyamory, but this is misadventures in asexuality too, and this was a misadventure for the record books. So, set the scene. Fall 2014, my senior year of college. I'm living at the time with my very close friend Miriam, aka Lucky Number 78 on YouTube and other social media, who I mention a lot in my content. And with good reason too. She's a very interesting person and a lot of interesting things happen to me with her. And this story is partially her fault. It's inspired by her. Wouldn't have happened if it weren't for her. So, senior year of college, we're living together, and it's Miriam's last semester. She was a semester ahead of me. And she was taking an acting class this semester. And there was a girl in her acting class that she had gotten to be friends with, apparently. They must have done some scenes together and everything. And the story goes that Miriam asked this girl what her type was in a romantic partner. And this girl answered, someone a little shorter than me, kind of nerdy, good sense of humor, and I like long hair. And lo and behold, I fit every one of those requirements. So Miriam has the bright idea, since she knew that I was kind of looking for love at this point, to set the two of us up on a blind date. And so one day my roommates and I are getting together for dinner, and we're waiting on Miriam, and in walks Miriam with this girl from her acting class. And she introduces the two of us, and to say that there were sparks at first sight would be a bit of an understatement. She was so very attractive to me. She was smart, she was fun, she seemed very sweet. And while at the time I wasn't necessarily the greatest at discerning whether or not somebody was flirting with me, there were some very obvious clues that she was flirting with me. Miriam kept trying to shove the conversation in the direction of, me divulging information about my type, which this girl happened to fit as well, and I believe this girl laughed and called me her soulmate. That's a tip-off, wouldn't you say? And so, later that night, I was talking to this girl. My roommates got the hint and went back to our suite ahead of me. And I had to go run an errand in town, so I just invited her along. And conversation's going very well, and she starts, bumping my shoulder as we're walking, and being just physical enough where there's a hint. And she asks me if I'm a virgin. Now, this question was very strange to me. I mean, considering Miriam had already known this girl, and I'm pretty sure I knew it was a setup, I didn't feel like I needed to tell her that I was ace yet. I said something like, that's one word for it, and she mentioned being afraid of sex, I think was her words. And that didn't strike me as bad. I was like, okay, then that means that's probably not going to be expected of me, and I can live with that. Because if a sexual component was expected of me in a relationship, I would probably turn bright red and turn right around and say no, because I am not comfortable with that sort of thing, personally. But anyway, run my errand, we're walking back to campus, and if I discern that there's enough time for me to cross, I'll just cross. Call it jaywalking. I've heard it called crossing Boston style, and as somebody who lives in Boston, I can get down with that. So I attempted to cross Boston style, and my date didn't like that, so she grabbed me by the hand and pulled me back. And that was also her, way of getting us to walk hand in hand the rest of the way back to campus. And so that was nice, and we walk back, head back towards my building, and she lets go. And she gives me a look and says, "Are you mad?" Now, I, at this point, was still taken aback that I was, being set up on a blind date with this cute girl. So I just start, sputtering and giggling and being the mess that I get on first dates that go well. The more of a mess I am, the better the sign is that the date is going well at first. And so, chalk that date up as a success. We continue to talk throughout the next week or so, and then I agree to go on a second date with her. And that second date involves me inviting her to my suite because, the family of us roommates were going to be having a movie night, and we decided to invite her along. So I invite her along, and she shows up, and immediately we pick up right back where we left off. Though at first I was a little bit shy physically, but I eventually got comfortable enough with her where we started cuddling and everything, and things were going very well. Then she tried to kiss me, which was very unexpected. Not only was it not expected, but I guess she didn't know. It's not her fault, admittedly. I mean, it kind of is, I guess, if you think about it. But, I hadn't told her that I was kissing repulsed yet. And that didn't sit well. So she tried to kiss me, and every muscle in my body just tensed. Was not a pleasant sensation. Most people, when they get kissed by somebody that they like, it's a good thing. Me, it's really not. So I tense up, and my date looks at me concerned, and I quietly tell her that I don't like kissing. Immediately goes limp and is very unresponsive to physical touch or tried to look at her to reassure her. Nothing. Nothing was working. She was clearly shutting down. And at this point, it's just a matter of me being anxious and waiting for this goddamn movie to end so that I can have a conversation with my date about what just happened. Eventually, the movie ends, and she drags me into my room. We start talking. I kind of tell her what's going on. I tell her that, I'm asexual, and not only do I particularly not like sex, but I also don't like kissing, and that's something that I have a hard time with, and it's something that I wouldn't be able to enthusiastically consent to. And she started crying and getting mad at me, and I was eventually able to talk her down from this place. It was in this part of the conversation that I told her I was poly, because while this was happening, I also had another date planned with a different girl that was going to occur that same weekend, and that story is another candidate for Misadventures in Polyamory, but I will go into that one and make a different video for it at a later date. Anyway, this was all to set the scene that this girl that I had now been on 2 dates with, it went from 0 to 10 back down to 0 in no time flat. And I was eventually able to talk her down, and it was getting very, very late because most of the people who lived with me, myself included, are night owls, and I invited her to spend the night with me. And she reluctantly agreed, but not much sleep was had for either one of us. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, and I guess she was doing the same thing. And at around sunrise, she told me she couldn't do this, and she left. And at this point, I didn't know what emotion to feel. But the next day, I had a conversation with her, both a little bit more refreshed and rested, and able to have a conversation about the previous evening's events. And so I start talking to her, and at first she's being very cordial and says that she can't do this, and she would want to be friends, and I was okay with that. My philosophy is always better to have cool, attractive friends in your life than to not to have cool, attractive people in your life at all. I've stayed friends with people that I've briefly dated. It's been fine. So I figured this was what was going to happen. So we keep talking, and the conversation starts to take a turn, and she gives me these backhanded compliments, like how I'm so special and unique, and that she's just an average girl who has average girl wants and needs, and that I would need somebody as special as I am to satisfy me. And one, I'm a little bit offended that she took that kind of tone with me, but at the same time, I've dated allosexual people before. In fact, I've pretty much exclusively dated allosexual people, and this has never been a problem because I'm polyamorous too. It just happens to work out, but there's always the expectation that I'm not going to be able to satisfy a partner sexually. But there's no harm in them seeking out somebody else who can, and that wouldn't diminish their relationship with me at all. That's just how I approach relationships. That's part of my polyamorous philosophy. I happen to be fortunate that I have a polyamorous sexuality, but it works out for me being an ace dating people who aren't ace. But I believe I said to her something like, a relationship with me wouldn't preclude you from seeing somebody else who is into that stuff or who could give you that stuff. This is when she starts to get really mad at me and says, that stuff is completely natural. I'm not the problem here. Meaning she's pinning this entire scenario. She's pinning all of the problems that have been discussed and brought to both of our attention the last couple days on me, saying that, this whole thing is my fault, and that if I weren't ace, and that if I weren't poly, then that I'm depriving her of something. And that attitude made me so mad and so upset and just so deeply hurt that after that point I could not stand to talk to her. That was the end of that potential friendship. And, usually this sort of thing doesn't happen to me. Most of the people I go out with don't have a problem with me being ace or me being poly. Most of them are poly themselves. But this was an early experience. This was a blind date. And, the attraction was there. The mutual attraction was there. It was just that we had incompatible sexualities, And she also refused to accept any responsibility for any of the nasty things she said about me. And that was the end of that potential relationship. One great date, one shitty date, and one horrible conversation to end it. Years later, I would find out that this girl was a closet lesbian the whole time. That should answer more questions than it raises, but it really doesn't. It just raises even more questions. Ugh. So, that was a misadventure in polyamory. I hope you found my torment entertaining or at least relatable. Actually, I hope you don't find it relatable, because if you do, then I really empathize. So, that about wraps up this video. I will see you next time with another misadventure. Find out what happens to me on my next dating story. What calamity will I encounter this time? Find out next time. This has been a misadventure in polyamory. This is Chaos Dude 7111 signing off.